Welcome to We Weren't Talking to You. I'm Ann.
And I'm Josh.
So why are we here, Josh?
We're here for several reasons. The main one is that we tend to have a lot of in-depth conversations, and they go unrecorded. So we're looking for a place that we can look at our own evolution of our thoughts and our ideas as time goes on in the future.
Yeah, so I think part of this is like, why now? Like, what's the rationale? I think that's driven by what you talked about. Like, we have interesting conversations. I think a lot of what's happening right now is technology driven with AI. I mean, that's at least where my interests are. So when we were talking about doing this, we thought it'd be nice to just record kind of as like almost like home movies for ourselves, like the evolution of our thoughts and how things change and how we react to things as they come to the surface. It's not meant to be like anything super well buttoned up. I mean, like the title of the pod at this point, which is subject to evolve, right, is We Weren't Talking to You. So these are really meant to be just conversations that we have that you might overhear, and they're supposed to be unscripted, unbothered, and unsurprisingly smart with an asterisk, right? That's in our opinion.
The un is optional in many cases.
Yeah. Surprisingly smart.
Yes.
Surprisingly unscripted. Surprisingly bothered. Does it work?
Yes.
Who knows? Okay. So again, I think the point of this, like we said, is just to really just kind of enjoy ourselves and have some good conversation. And if other people are interested in what we have to say, this is your chance to hear what we're talking about. So the first thing we want to talk about is this idea. One of the things we wanted to kind of go over is like stuff that we've seen that seems kind of off, right?
Yes.
So like think about something that's been like talked about in the news, like whatever news means to you these days, and what we might have said or what we might think about it versus like how it's been covered.
Yeah, and a lot of times we may or may not agree with the general vibe of the news or the general subject of what they're going over, but we definitely like to look at specific angles of things and just kind of how like addressing that angle changes kind of the perspective of the entire story. So we're going to go into a story that is more about an angle here than the actual story itself.
All right, I think we've done enough disclaimers. So at this point, like, if you're not interested, we weren't talking to you.
Right.
So we're just going to transition.
You can always press stop.
Smash
that stop button.
Smash that stop button. To what we're going to go about. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to bring to this is the MAHA report. So Make Our Children Healthy Again. Now, I want to be very clear here. Like, I really have no interest in discussing the politics of it or even the content of it. What I want to talk about and really dig into is, so this is a report that came out at the end of May. It came out like May 22nd, and there was some not immediate, it actually took a little bit of time. So like this is a Washington Post article, and this is sort of like the foundation of where I wanted to begin this discussion. And this was published on May 30th. So you can see the title, the headline, the MAHA reports AI fingerprints annotated. So the MAHA report is, like I said, Make American Children Healthy Again. It was released by the RFK Jr. administration. It is available on the White House website. I'll just do some quick scrolls in it so you can see what it looks like. There's some charts. Here's the actual full report. It's a pretty in-depth PDF. Admittedly, I haven't read through it all, but this will be important as I go through it to point out some things. And so the key takeaway from this is that when it first came out, and I think at least what I've seen is that people focused on the AI fingerprints, as the Washington Post, the influence of AI, and absolutely nothing on the content. To be honest with you, like I haven't heard much, at least in the news channels that I follow, around the content of it, whether it is controversial or not. What about you?
I haven't either. I mean, we were just scrolling through it just for setting up for this discussion, and the charts. So from what I understood, people just thought they threw it together. Everybody thought they were going to throw together this report because they promised to have a report in like 3 weeks or something like that. So some short time frame for having some comprehensive report. scrolling through it, it seemed like just a lot of almost like high-level charts. I'm better at reading charts than English, so like just classic how much more expensive it is to live to pay for healthcare in America versus everywhere else. Cancer rates going up, obesity going up, those kinds of like charts that are just kind of like very high level
world indicators, something. What we would maybe call it,
Yes, like
societal indicators.
Download this, hit the UN website and download a bunch of data and then throw together some charts. I think they're just screen cap charts. But the thing that was, I think, the issue is that a lot of the text and stuff seems AI made. That the charts are clearly not made by AI.
Well, so I think really what was hit on, and you can see it in here, is it says that Post reviewed more than 500 citations. Here are the patterns of AI use we found. So this is just one outlet. You can see that they said that the notice NOTUS originally talked about it. And so there are some important things it says. It says that the citations were garbled and there were invented studies that underpin the report's conclusions. The way the administration discussed this was like that these were minor citation and formatting errors, but the substance, like I'm reading this direct quote, minor citation and formatting errors have been corrected, but the substance of the MAHA report remains the same. Historic and transformative assessment by the federal government to understand the chronic disease epidemic afflicting our nation's children. This is by a Department of Health and Human Services spokesman, Andrew Nixon, excuse me. So interestingly, and this is very important for me to say, is like the focus of where AI's fingerprints was all on the citations. I have a better picture of the citations themselves. There they are. So as we look in on it, this is what the Washington Post did. So what they did is, if you look at the report, if you look at the PDF, there's basically footnotes on every single page, and they went through and looked at these citations. So a lot of this is like formatting heavy. So if you imagine that there are different style guides for writing different things and how they are portrayed. So the first thing that they pointed out was this OAI site in the URL, which is indicative that it was generated by OpenAI, probably ChatGPT. This is a tagging concept in URL construction. And so that was the first thing where they're like, oh, well, they clearly found this using ChatGPT. Now, there's some inference here, and I want to kind of get to this, is like, we both have written research papers long ago. We both know the pain of citing things and style guides associated with that.
Right.
There's no particular skill or intelligence level in constructing citations in a proper style format.
Yes.
Is kind of where I'm going to stand on this.
Yes, it's a memorize the style, implement it 100% correct, or you did it wrong, even though everybody would totally understand where the citation came from. Some people really wanted specific punctuation to be used.
Yeah.
I guess because they missed it from normal conversation.
So that's the first one. And it doesn't, so again, they say that they went through everything, and this is the first kind of piece of evidence that they're coming out with. Then it gets a little bit more deep. So other scientific articles have discussed direct-to-consumer advertising of psychotropic medications, but this particular article does not exist. It did mention that the person cited, this R.L. Findling, is a real person who has published research, but he didn't write this. And a spokesperson said he never wrote such an article. So the way I'm interpreting this is that this person is real. This person has studied pediatric psychiatric medication use, but this study name is fake. They didn't say anything about the journal, and I think in some scenarios they talk about fake publications. So this is interesting in and of itself because they didn't really say like,
it's untrue.
Right, this isn't this guy's perspective, or the way it's cited in the report is untrue. I haven't read the entire report. I don't want to focus on the contents of the report. I'm just trying to focus on like the AI.
Using AI to build a
fingerprints
government
of this
report for public
consumption.
congestion.
Yeah. And then as we move down, so this is, a same article is cited twice on one page with two different authors, neither of whom are listed as the writers. AI chatbots can intersperse references to actual material with inaccurate information about them. So this is, I think, maybe the best said, and this is something, if you've worked with AI, particularly ChatGPT, that you notice quite readily is that it really struggles with URL construction.
Yes.
And so I can also imagine that it struggles with citation construction. And the rationale I have for that, I don't really like this concept, but it does work well for this. So if you think of AI as sort of a prediction engine, or as some people might want to say, like a super fancy autocomplete,
Right.
and you imagine the mechanics and the inner workings of it, it's trying to pull in the next best word or, language-based element that would fit into base that it thinks goes next. So it's trying to predict what comes next. So I think it gets a little bit interesting and somewhat dicey here. So the one thing I would say is maybe this means that they were actually using ChatGPT to construct the citations again, not necessarily using it to construct the evidence in the report. I have no idea, and I'm not making any claims, nor do I want to get into that. But that's maybe something I would take away from this is like, I could imagine pasting in a whole bunch of links and being like, hey, these are the citations. Can you format all of this? Because let's be honest, like, I think for a layperson like me that doesn't write a lot of research papers, and I don't know how good software is to do a lot of these like auto citations and cleanliness is these days, that's kind of what this speaks to me.
Yes.
Again, I have no evidence, but.
Yeah, the thing that I would say is that like, it's almost weird to expect ChatGPT to get like syntax 100% correct on constructing a link and a reference.
Yeah.
It's just, it doesn't really work or think that way. It kind of thinks
as I always say, yet.
Right, and we'll go into that in just a second. But like, it's more like if somebody said, "Hey, Josh, here, write some things, and then just go ahead. Here's the URL. Just go ahead and throw together a citation for that." Like, I'm just gonna go like, I guess, so I remember there being like brackets and like, you know what I mean? Like that's such a normal thing you would expect from somebody who's not actually looking at how to do citations and then rewriting them. And that's how ChatGPT works. It's not going out to the citation sites and saying, how does the citation work? And then coming back and we're like, okay, I'm going to do this. It's just literally spitting out the next thing that seems like the greatest thing to put down there. So that's what, it's weird to expect it. It's weird to put it in there. I do have a feeling after reading this and some of the things we're going to go over further is that somebody may have thrown together a report, put in a bunch of links and stuff, and then just said, hey, please just make this legible. This is something people do all the time. You want to throw together an email, you put something out there, and you say, hey, please just rewrite it. Now, I would recommend rereading that email and making sure it's saying exactly what you want it to say, make sure it didn't leave anything out because it drops a little bit of content as time goes on. And then, sending your own email with your own changes to it. And the same thing with this report is somebody should have gone through this with a fine-tooth comb and checked for these kinds of things, especially if they had the links and the information. It would have been non-trivial, but still like half of each page is just citations. So there's a little bit of just like flooding the zone, as it were, of citations. So that's, I can understand where somebody may not be interested in checking all that information, but it's a big thing to do. And then also, as your report or whatever gets longer, it'll get worse. As time goes on, it kind of starts to get a little bit fuzzy on what's happening. And so I do think that, this is where probably one of the better skills, again, we don't know if we're going to be facing this in the future, or maybe this is how it's always going to be with AI. It's hard to say what's going to happen, but kids cheating on research papers are going to be much better at making a report like this than some guy at the HHS or whatever.
So let's move on to the other ones just to get through it. So this next one says a nearly identical article with the same lead author published in the same journal that year, but not with the same co-authors. The statistic about overprescription this article is offered as a citation for does not actually appear in the article. So that's, again, useful. So this is actually saying there was evidence that whatever was in the report it being directly cited didn't line up with this actual document, this source. Here's a dead URL. AI experts said chatbots can produce outdated links in response to queries because they were trained using older material. That's true. I mean, that doesn't surprise me at all that you could get to a dead link. I think it's always evolving, but for a long time, ChatGPT has been really cut off to sometime in the 2023, 2024 timeframe. Here we go. This is another formatting thing. Citations generally do not provide quotes or excerpts of the reference material. Their inclusion is consistent with the use of AI. Fine. Here's another one. We've got the same. Duplicate citations are not used in a standard bibliography. The repeated instance, especially so close where a human reviewer could more easily spot the error, is consistent with an AI-generated material. So I want to say this, like, if you are a professor and you're going through someone's research report and you are like, oh my goodness, you cited the same document twice, it's citation number 438 and citation number 440, you've done it twice and you're dinged for that, I think that's a failing of the education system. Like, it's sort of missing the entire purpose of the exercise, in my opinion, by doing this. Now, again, I'm not trying to defend this in any way. I'm just saying this is kind of a really minute thing to focus on. And that's why it's so interesting to me, is because, for, like I said before, like, from my perspective, a lot of what was actually contained in this report got buried under the AI fingerprints that were all over the citations. Yeah. And the AI fingerprints seem mostly formatting in nature, which is what the guy said. I'm laughing because I'm trying to stay neutral here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that this kind of is a larger issue. Like, you have people who have expertise in, research and citations, going through and finding like the tiny things that are wrong with research and citations, which we may be doing later with charts. Like, we have expertise in data and charts, and you're like, oh, this person did this and this and that. And you can see little things if you really know what's going on. But the general public doesn't really care, and it doesn't really change, the outcomes. I would be much more interested in seeing something that says, like that one with a fake number is much more interesting to me than like a repeated citation. Yeah. And the thing is like, if this is another thing that I think gets lost on people, especially if you're really into some sort of like specific niche, is that if you're pulling up things like a repeated citation, that kind of indicates to me that you've run out of things to talk about. Like, if you couldn't come up with like a real smoking gun, as it were, and you're like,
you mean in this article?
Yeah, in this article, like you're just kind of like, okay, so we're down to repeated citations. Let's go, like.
Well, to your point, that's what that article focused on. I mean, it said that they went through 500 citations. So it's maybe not atypical that they started there. I don't know, but it is interesting. So one of the things about this is that they focused on the citations, which is where a lot of people focused. But I want to focus in on actual places where I think maybe they've missed the mark on where AI's fingerprints might actually be. So here's the actual report. I use AI a lot to summarize my thoughts and write small articles. Usually my process is something like, I'm very direct. I'll say, this is how I feel about this. This is how I feel about this. This is how I feel about this. This is the conclusionary thought I feel about it. And then I let it kind of put it into a paragraph. And then I edit it and review it. Because I've been doing it for a while now, probably 2 or 3 months, there's a lot of commonalities that have kind of come out. They align with a lot of like, kind of clickbaity articles that are like, here are the 10 giveaways that you're using ChatGPT to write your work. First, I want to say I have absolutely no problem with using AI to form complete sentences of thoughts that you already have. Now, I definitely think, and you can attest to this, you need to monitor what it's saying and make sure it's actually representing what you are intending, because it does have, to your point, a lot of knowledge baked in. We don't know the entire corpus of knowledge that it has. The way you always say this is like, when I put something down at like 90% gets what I'm talking about, either from like a depth or like maybe an opinion or a position, but there's lots of times where it will add things that aren't necessarily right. And I'll let you talk in just a second, because the one thing that kind of sticks in my mind is so I use it a lot for doing reflections on books that I've read or listened to. And in one of the most recent ones I did, it kept saying that the author masterfully discussed a topic. And I was like, please, like, let's not praise this author more than the author deserves. So there was like, to me, I was like, okay, well, maybe you've been trained on what other people have said and like what their reviews of this was, because that didn't really have it didn't hold weight to my experience. Like, they were well discussed, but not masterfully discussed enough times that it needed to show up like 6 or 7 times. So anyway, that's kind of the key, the tee up to this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I disagree with you on that. It will definitely pull kind of like the general pop consensus in on things, even if you're kind of going against that, or if you just kind of want to have your own thoughts on it, it'll kind of try to sneak it in there. Kind of unrelated to this, but sort of like in setup, I asked it to, we have several tools, and I asked it to set something to priority 5. And it was kind of like, it's a little thing, but it was easy to get done. So I was like, hey, let's set that to priority 5. And it said all right, Josh, I've set this task to priority 5, parentheses lowest. And priority 5 is the highest. And so in that moment, it's just trying to complete what it thinks is the right,
what should come next.
What should come next. And so it just kind of thought that my task was low priority because it's kind of like a trivial thing. I just figured we should get it done as soon as possible because it is so easy to get done. And it was just like, no, it's the lowest priority, even though it set it as 5. And that kind of stuff just bleeds through. It's like it has its own kind of framework in pop culture, in everything it's brought in.
Norms,
all that stuff that it's gonna sort of leak in there. And if you're kind of going against that, or you want your own distinct voice, you really have to make sure that it's not doing that. Go ahead.
So while you're talking, I pulled up this phrasing, this not just. So a lot of times Josh will actually say he's very sensitive to this, and we both have been analysts for a long time, so I think we are pretty sensitive to patterns and things that repeat themselves. But it's this concept of an M dash. So I'm going to read this sentence because this is the first evidence, and this is where I feel like maybe people were missing the point, or we kind of feel like that is okay, so AI was using the citations. That in and of itself is not super interesting. It'd be more interesting to be well, where was it used in actually constructing the physical report? Right. So here is the first example. And again, this is all speculation. So I'm going to read just this second paragraph here to start here. So to turn the tide and better protect our children, the United States must act decisively. During this administration, we will begin reversing the childhood chronic disease crisis by confronting its root causes, not just its symptoms. So one thing, like I said, this is the, ways ChatGPT is writing your stuff is this kind of M dash concept. So that long dash along with that, this isn't just this, it's that. And this kind of falls into that category. Yep. Josh is very sensitive to this. It's it's not just a platform. It's a
environment.
It's a hyper real, whatever. And especially I think with some of the latest updates to ChatGPT that align with some of the sycophancy, the, sort of being wow, Ann, you're a genius or whatever. Right. You're okay, I like myself enough, right? Yeah, but let's tone it down a bit.
We don't have to say it every time.
I think it's gotten into this sort of this is so transformative type thing, or a way to double down on itself. And this sort of concept is sort of similar throughout. So this, I think, is a good example of where there's potential from an editorial perspective that it was used in there. I've got a couple other examples in my notes here that we can go through. The other one I want to go to is I actually want to just go to page 8 of this document. Is another thing that I find happening consistently is these bolded sections. So if you look, you see it says, today American farmers feed the world, American companies lead the world, and American energy powers the world. When there are very sticky points, ChatGPT is prone to bolding those things to really pull them out. So this is a formatting thing, but it's also a language thing. This is like a really nice kind of like three-pronged sentence. Today, American farmers feed the world. American companies lead the world. And American energy powers the world. This is a repetitive sentence structure that's well done, and it's bolded, and there's even a little bit of like rhythm in there that's quite... This to me speaks AI a bit.
And that's what I was going to say, is that it is a very signature rhythm. And like, da 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 da. You know what I mean? You end up with this rhythm. It's the same thing with the not just, right? Like, but da 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 da.
Yeah.
Like, and it's very, it sounds the same whenever you say. I call it kind of like a TED Talkie. Like,
yes.
when I tell ChatGPT to calm down, I say, hey, take the TED Talks out of this thing, because it is very much like, I've got you on a hook, but now I've got you on this hook. Like it's sort of clickbaity, whatever.
Right. Well, it's meant to I think it's a pattern or a rhythm that's meant to be more guiding if you're reading or listening to it, or it's actually more like spoken word, I would say, than like reading. But it's kind of obvious. And so anytime I see this sort of like bolding throughout, so there's one on page 8, and I've got a couple other. So page 21 has another one where it kind of looks similar. So let me just scroll down to 21. I think this is 21 right here. So this is another. Farmers are the backbone of America and the most innovative and productive in the world. We continue to feed the world as the largest food exporter. Again, I haven't read a lot of different reports, but I find it very, to me, this is they're saying this as like a critical element of this and trying to get it to jump out. But I think that AI could be doing this. So this is another one where I'm like, okay, I think that this is an example. Interestingly, it also has like these, throughout the report, they have these like short dashes between things. So
like find and replace.
Who knows? But I have seen that kind of throughout. And I think you can see up here where this has this ultra processed foods through additives and nutritional alterations. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with the M-dash. I use the M-dash a lot myself, just within my own writings. It's usually more in the beginning, not littered throughout as much as it would be if I were leaning more on AI to get my opinion out or my voice out. But again, I think this bolding section, and again, I haven't read it enough to know in full context, but I find it suspect that there's these sections throughout. And I just went through and found that there's not very many where it is. And I almost would say that this is an American opinion, right? This is something that a lot of people would even hesitate to be against. Farmers are the backbone of America, right? That's a great statement to say in reality and to believe, and that's a very patriotic statement, I would say.
Right. Well, I just find it interesting that we bolded basically the second half of this paragraph.
Right.
Decided to unbold half the last sentence. This is very much like that's another thing with AI, is that it does things that people just wouldn't do. Nobody with any sort of ego would bold like this because they'd feel weird just bolding halfway through that last conclusion sentence here.
Yeah.
You would have more pride in your, or more self-consciousness in your formatting to just be like, oh yeah, bold willy-nilly.
Okay, and then there's one on 39. That's the last one, and then I'm going to go to one other section to kind of talk about it. So here we go. Here's 39. No country in the world has fully accounted for the fact that children are often exposed to complex mixtures of chemicals. It's kind of a scare quote, right?
Complex mixtures.
Complex mixtures of chemicals. A mixture of a chemical. Yeah. I mean, again, I don't want to drill too much in on the content, but this is, I think, another example of it's just sort of they put this in there. And again, if you look at this report, there's very few times where this bolding is intra-paragraph. It doesn't happen very frequently. I went through and looked at the sections where it happens. There's bolding as it starts different areas, and I want to talk about that and kind of end on that, but there's absolutely not very much bolding inline in paragraphs. So here's another one. The DGA have a history of being unduly influenced by corporate interests. So the last one I want to go to, and I think it's most obvious on this page, which is page 72, which is right at the end of the report. I apologize for all the scrolling. Here it is. And so, next step, supporting gold standard scientific research and developing a comprehensive strategy. The only thing I want to focus on here is the way this list was generated. So again, there's stylistic things. I've written 2 books. When you write for different publishers, they have different style guides. And I know when I worked with my publisher, they had a style guide, which was to do numbered lists, to have them bolded and to have a colon or have them italicized in some points and then carry on from there. So this is one thing I just want to say from a formatting perspective where I think AI is in here, unless it is just a stylistic style guide thing, because you see a lot of different areas where it's bold and then it's introducing whatever a bulleted list is, whatever a numbered list is, et cetera. And so I think this is the best visual representation of how I think AI probably helped a lot on the formatting and organization, I guess would be the best way I would say, organization of things.
And to say, like, if you didn't start with an AI list here, I'd question your, intent to get the job done, because coming up with this list as a summary of the entire report is extremely challenging.
That's true. That's fair. Because, especially if you wrote it all,
right.
And that's what we use AI a lot for. It's like, you brain dump a concept or something, and then you're like, can you just pull out the details? And it's going to go through and pull them out in either typically, chronological or, where it appeared in chronological order from within the text, or it might organize it into themes depending on maybe how you prompt it or you talk about it with it. But that's very labor intensive if you're one person doing this. If you're another person, you talk about the sort of layers, right? It's like someone wrote this. It's a completely different person or a different task skill to go through and be like, okay, what were the salient points in each different section?
And let's summarize them all to exactly one sentence, or you know what I mean? And that's the thing you can see, especially down here in large lifestyle interventions, ChatGPT has issues. We're using M dashes and standard dashes, and it really gets confusing to read because you're like, is this a compound word or is this supposed to be a pause? Because they have inverse meanings, right? Like reduced carb is how I guess you would say that is supposed to be fast, but the M dash is supposed to be a breath. And so when you put them all together like this, you can get a little bit weird on the eyes. This is up. In the report, I saw that too.
Oh, I didn't even see this. I was like, where is he seeing reduced carb? But in these nutritional trials, the NIH should fund long-term trials comparing whole food, reduced carb, and low UPF diets. It's interesting that it says reduced carb. I think that's a little casual.
Yeah.
I would think a more scientific or formal, maybe the word I'm looking for is formal, would say reduced carbohydrate, actually call it out. Reduced carb feels kind of mainstream.
TikTok.
Don't say TikTok. So anyway, the whole point of this, and we're going to move on, but was just to say, I think that the headlines are kind of missing the point.
Yeah.
And doing a couple things here. One is obstructing the information that's actually contained within the report, almost causing an issue by saying, oh, there's AI fingerprints all over the citations, which is much more formatting oriented, and not drilling into where AI is in other areas. I don't think we're gonna have time to get into it today, but I think that this speaks to something that you and I have lots of discussions on and is naturally gonna unfold as we carry on, is just people, the public perception of AI and how it's influencing things and the actual reality of it, and also the public perception of what AI is useful for and how we what we think it's useful for, and demonstrations of that utility.
Yeah, and I won't get very deep because we will cover it later, but there is a clear anti-bias against AI with anybody who has intellectual property to defend and feels threatened by AI. That comes across as clear as other industries doing their best to quiet certain things that bother them, is all I'll say.
Okay, so next topic we're gonna get into, which is great because we're kind of switching gears. I will pull up a picture just to get us on the same page. Dun da da!
Yes.
The Nintendo Switch 2. So Nintendo Switch 2 was released on June 5th. 12:01 a.m. I always get so confused about they're like, oh, it's going to be released. I'm like, is it at midnight? I'm like, midnight, like, whatever. We don't need to get into my beliefs on midnight. Other than, never mind. That Midnights is my favorite Taylor Swift. If I were a Taylor Swift album, I'd be Midnights. But beyond that, it was released on June 5th. Today is June 8th. So I wanted to kind of talk about, and Josh, I'd love for you to kind of talk through the story of the whole thing. I want to go through like how we got them, leading up to it, and then I also want to give some, feedback and our kind of recency reviews on it. So go for it.
So going into it, Anne's a very Nintendo person. She's been Nintendo all her life. She got me into Nintendo. I was a very Xbox, Microsoft person. We still have an Xbox and stuff in the back.
And he's a PC gamer.
Yeah, PC gamer. Yeah, if that was the thing. But anyway, with the Switch, we were like, oh, do we want the Switch? Looked at the reviews. It looked good. On the day of the pre-release stuff,
Nintendo Direct.
The Nintendo Direct, we were very busy. I don't remember with what, but we were too busy to actually check. And so we didn't actually pre-order anything. And then the pre-orders were gone.
We saw the Nintendo Direct, and then they had a delayed. So a couple things happened. Like the Nintendo Direct came out, which just debuted the product, and that was like sometime at the end of March, beginning of April, but like really like end of March, beginning of April. Might have even been like April 1st. If you remember, Liberation Day happened and the tariffs happened, and Trump had those big scary charts. So one thing that happened is they had the Nintendo Direct, and they said, hey, this is coming out. It's going to be this price. Pre-orders will begin at a later point in time. So pre-orders did not begin the day or the week of the Nintendo Direct. So when you talk about we were busy to do pre-orders, that's because it was maybe, 2 to 5 weeks afterwards, and we were probably out of town or something like that. But with that whole Liberation Day thing, there was a period of time where Nintendo actually took the price away of it.
Yeah.
Which I think is...
And the timeline may or may not have changed, but I felt like it did. And so there was a lot of just like,
the timeline did change. They changed when you're right. I think they changed when the pre-orders were going to be available. They went from like, maybe it's going to be available like that following Friday or something. Nintendo waited.
Yeah. And so like with all that timeline change, you had to be much more in on it, more than we were. And we still knew, and there was just things that happened that made it so we weren't able to get the pre-order. But that's fine, because I think that there's a difference between a pre-order and a purchase. And the pre-orders, I'm guessing, were gone immediately.
Yeah, I mean, I looked the next morning, right? Because like that's the other thing is like pre-orders come out at midnight. Yep. I think the key thing here is like midnight's really late for an adult to stay up to on a school night, on a work night. But I had looked the following morning and they were all gone. And that makes sense. It's guaranteed inventory. I know retailers, especially for this, like you could see it like from like Best Buy early on, they were like, oh, we're going to have a launch event. So to me, it seems like they were kind of putting some devices to the side, but still offering a chance and opportunity to make it an event-driven release and have like a release party, which is interesting because, we did, this is very key to the lore of Anne and Josh and like the history of Anne and Josh. Like we stood in line to get a Nintendo Wii when it came out. We were at Walmart. The Xbox 360 was, so what was that? Was it the PS3? What was the first most scarce thing? It was a PlayStation. Was it the PS3?
Yeah, the PS3 was scarce, but we're not really PlayStation people, so we weren't really in on that.
So the PlayStation was super scarce for a very long time, and then the Xbox 360 came out, and it was pretty scarce for at least the first year, I would say, if not more. And then the Nintendo Wii came out. Again, I think that's the order of them, but obviously I'll look it up and know, but it doesn't really matter. So obviously, based on what Josh said, we stood in line to get the Nintendo Wii, and then we didn't get the PlayStation. It also is really expensive, and then the Xbox is really expensive as well. I think at that point the Nintendo Wii had a maybe $200 less price point. I think that the PlayStation was around like $500 or $450, and the Wii was around $250, which is a
lot of money.
We're talking, 2000. 5, 6, 7, 8 time frame. So clearly that would have been different dollars during
20 years ago.
Pre-recession, because we were both in school. So it had to have been probably 2006 or something like that. Anyway, so yes, we didn't get pre-orders, but guess what? We got them. So talk about how we actually managed to score them, and talk about at least some decisions we made going into the purchase, and talk a little bit about the pandemic, because I think the pandemic and the Nintendo Switch scarcity plays into this a bit.
Yeah, that's the next step, is that we had Switches. So when we got a Switch, we were not doing as we were running a business, so we weren't doing as much video games, and so Anne got a Switch, I don't know, pretty quickly after they came out, to have one, not on launch, but just to have one and play with. Eventually, I got a Switch Lite, which is just a smaller Switch that, importantly, doesn't have the little controllers to come off, or the ability to play video on a screen. Those are the two main drawbacks to it. But I was just kind of using it to play some random Nintendo games. I was still kind of, if I was going to do Nintendo anything, it was probably going to be a DS type thing. And again, we were very busy at the time. So then the pandemic comes along, and Animal Crossing comes out, and I'm playing Animal Crossing on what's effectively a tiny screen, and so there's
your poor hands,
and my hands are small, and so I ended up getting like a Pro controller with this crazy attachment that would hold the screen, but it's still a very interesting layout, and so we wanted to get a Switch, but there was a run on Switches during the pandemic. I mean, the low supply chain, plus everybody wanting to play like a handheld device, even though they're stuck in their homes, and Animal Crossing coming out and being like the perfect, it
was an escapism.
Kill a freaking day with Animal Crossing, because you're stuck inside, and Animal Crossing is just a real-time game. You literally have to wait the days it takes for fruit to grow or whatever. So you're not just refreshing the screen. There's no way, well, you could cheat, but there's no way to get things done quicker if you actually want the date time to be correct in your game. So it's a very slow grind game, which goes great when you're stuck in your house and can't leave. And it took us probably 6 or 7 months to get my full-size Switch. And we just grabbed one whenever we saw it. So here, we're going both ways. So we're in a weird economic time. It's not a pandemic. People seem to not really care about saving their money right now and just blow it on whatever they have.
Tariffs.
And tariffs. And then AI, but AI is kind of adjacent to this, not in it. But all those things mix into what's happening right now. And that raises and lowers the bar of the demand on it and things like that. And so I didn't know what we were going to do, but what we were going to do.
I knew what we were going to do.
So the key point here is that according to Best Buy, they were going to do like a midnight in the Eastern time launch. So everybody was going to get, so the Best Buys here were opening at 9 p.m., 9:01 p.m. And so that changed and we know enough to check things at midnight on Eastern, because that's, where people live. So Anne says, okay, it's getting close to 9. I'm thinking well, it doesn't even really matter if we get there. This is like a Taylor Swift concert or something, right? Even it's worse than Taylor Swift concert because you can always return this hardware. So anybody who wants to buy 30 of them can always just return 30 of them if they can't sell them. So there's no downside other than your time and effort and listing and all that stuff in buying these things. And if you don't have a lot of money, your time doesn't really matter. You just go stand in line to return these things. So anyway, I figured there's going to be so many bots. We're going to be trying to do it with our fingers. good luck to us. We had an advantage in the sense that we were going to try to do Costco.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I think important to say is like, given what Josh just said in our history with consoles, like I was adamant, like we're doing this day one. I'm not waiting. I don't want to wait. The pricing of these things never goes down. Like it's not going to happen. We've seen the evolution of the actual Switch hardware. We had watched the directs, and so we were pretty locked in. Then the next question, which we had already figured out, and you can kind of see it on the boxes, is would we get the bundle with Mario Kart World or not? The advantage of getting the bundle besides the software being there is it's a higher price point. So you kind of have this sort of separation of like, if you imagine us when we got the Wii in our 20s, we're like, okay, we've got to get the basic one. We can't even afford that extra $50 for a second controller or the software that's bundled in there. So already we were like, we're going to go to this sort of, I'm going to say higher tier, even though it's exactly the same, but it's got the software bundled in, which is a great idea because the software price has actually increased significantly for just an individual game. And I think that's going to be an interesting thing to watch in the video game world. Nintendo's the first organization I feel like that's come out with that. So we were very locked in. I was adamant, we're doing this. It was not a discussion. The discussion had already been had because we knew that there were all of these sort of, historic elements that caused friction in our lives before. And honestly, I just don't want to put up with it.
Yeah,
I just
you could summarize that under trauma.
Trauma, yeah. So that was the thing going into it. Josh has keyed it up nicely. It's June 4th, I guess, 9:01 p.m.
Yes. And so we're at our two computers. The plan is to try Costco.
Oh yes, we had said Costco, which
Right.
interestingly has the Mario Kart bundle plus a Nintendo Switch online subscription, which you cannot transfer, you cannot add to your account. We have a family subscription, obviously for obvious reasons. There's two of us. You can actually put up to, I think it's 8 people now on your family subscription, which is $79.99 a year, I believe. So we share that with our family members. As I had done the research, I was like, well, this isn't really a good idea. But I did say that evening, maybe I need to rethink how I'm thinking about this and consider that $25 as a premium for the opportunity to purchase the device and actually have a chance. I could still sell it, whatever, do something with it. So it's not like a totally lost asset. It just is some asset that we're not going to use. The picture has it as like a separate card, so not a big deal. But anyway, so yes, Costco, go.
So it's 9 o'clock. So we're checking. We have Costco, Sam's Club,
Walmart, Target,
Best Buy, all those things. But like for the most part, this is a Costco, Sam's Club play because they're going to already have a filter on who can get to them. They're going to have a hard, not insurmountable, but a real filter on making sure that only one household gets it. Like it's not going to be credit cards, it's not going to be this. It's going to be your membership. So unless you went out and got 12 memberships to Costco, you're already pretty much stuck there. Nobody went out and got 12 memberships to Costco. That just wasn't worth it, whatever. So we were ready there at 9:01, refreshing, nothing's happening on Costco, Eventually Sam's Club comes up and is like, oh yeah, we have these. It wasn't even really clear. It's just like the light turned on for the purchase button. It wasn't that great. So Anne went ahead and put in an order for that.
Yep.
And again, we've done so much of this stuff in the past with different things that even when you get through the cart and all that stuff, you're still only at 90% sure that it's actually going to happen. This is again the trauma. Is that I don't believe it until we have tracking that is shipped.
Box in hand is when I believe
right.
it.
Well, Anne's box in hand. If the carrier picks something up from somebody and it has a weight and stuff like that, then I'm definitely again, it could still get stolen. Aliens could abduct the driver. Whatever could happen.
No.
But I'm pretty confident that they're at least trying to get it to me after that point. Before that, it's all just flips in a database, and who knows if they actually are checking it. Of course, people are much better than they used to be, but at the time, whatever. So anyway, Anne puts it in the cart, Anne checks out, Anne pays. It shows up as a payment. All this stuff is set. We try to get a second one, and you can only get one per membership. Including the separate whatever membership
plus household. You get your name and then
secondary membership with a different login. All that stuff didn't count. It was per main membership that you actually paid for.
Yep. Target said that they weren't going to have it. You'd have to go in store. Online would be on the 6th, so Target was out of the equation. Best Buy, very similar to Target. They're like, oh, we're doing this in person first. And so I feel like Target and Best Buy kind of colluded on their launch approach, which I actually think was a bad idea in terms of how they did it. If you're just talking about from a retail perspective of trying to push products off the shelf, this is not something you need to go see in store. This is not something you need to pick up in store. The only reason you would want to pick it up in store is if you had some sort of concern about the actual shipping process, like if you felt nervous about it arriving, right?
Yeah.
Or there was like a birthday party or something you wanted to go to, you were like a diehard fan. But this is quite different. This is not the same as like an Xbox being released with a brand new campaign-driven game as the flagship product. We're talking the flagship software is Mario Kart. It's a racing game, right? It's not like Grand Theft Auto or something where everybody wants to go and see the story and see how everything unfolds. There's not a lot of like secrets to do. So yes, Sam's Club, we get it. And then we're starting to get into this murky area.
So then we're like, oh, well, we can't get a second one.
Oh, well, that's good enough,
Yeah, I tend to cave early. So I'm like, oh, yeah, that's good enough. You have one. You're the one that's going to play it the most. As long as we have one, we can play with it. I still have my Switch, all this stuff. I have 2 Switches.
No.
Anne is the one that's like, if this doesn't execute 100%, we're burning the house down. So we're looking at, Anne's looking at different places. I'm thinking about asking my cousins to order one. It is 9-10 p.m., but they're still online. This is the thing, is that they're still available on Sam's Club.
Yeah.
And it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
It wasn't that long, but
whatever. And so Anne is working on getting it, or looking at Walmart, and she's like, oh, they're all gone from Walmart. And then eventually one shows up in a side
banner ad.
Like a banner ad on the side says, hey, get your Switch now or whatever. And so she pushes the button in there to add it to her cart, and it adds to the cart. What it wouldn't add from the main screen.
Right, from the product page, yeah.
And so then she checks out with it. And I'm just like, this is, I wasn't even sure if I should still get another one ordered, because I was like, this is the kind of thing that gets canceled.
Yep.
Like, if anything's going to get canceled, it's something that was already showing out of stock on the main screen, and then there's an exception over here. So somebody could have easily just been like, oh, they wrote up the banner ad and they're like, put a button there, whatever, and it takes them to the cart, and it puts the item in the cart. And you're like, okay, that sounds cool. And then somebody else who does cart management doesn't check inventory before actual checkout. It's like, because if you got in the cart, then it must have been in the cart. And so this is the kind of thing that you could run into in the past.
Yes.
And so I was like, whatever.
That's happened, yeah.
And then we talked about it for a while, and we're like, you know what? Walmart knows what they're doing. They have excellent inventory, real-time inventory throughout the thing. There's no way that in 2025 people aren't checking inventory on things in the cart. Like that's a 2015 thing that, when you hired questionable programmers to put together your cart, that's how it would be. And so we're like, okay, it's going to be there. And they eventually both arrived. That was
the best part, yeah.
It was 2 days, I think.
Yeah, so, we watched it, like, as Josh said, like the Sam's Club one we felt pretty good about. It said it was going to arrive on Saturday. The Walmart one said it was going to arrive on Friday. And so that's just where big eyebrow raises. So I imagine this is Wednesday evening when we're ordering these. But we chose to just be like, hey, let's trust them. Let's trust that they'll actually do what they say that they're going to do. Let's just not agonize over this any further and let it be. We've already had that disappointment many, many times in the past. So I did watch them till they got tracking numbers, which took a bit of time, but we received both of them on Friday.
Friday, yep. And we had them. And so now we've had them both for a couple days. We moved everything from one Switch to the other.
We did the transfer process. We've been playing Mario Kart. So one interesting thing which you can kind of see in the boxes is we got the Mario Kart World bundles for both of them, but you can see they're different. The one that I got, which was from Walmart actually arrived first, shipped via FedEx. You can see it. It's the one on the left. So this one, you can see that the Mario Kart is actually printed on the box. And then you can see the one from Sam's Club that Josh got has a sticker on the box for Mario Kart World. So interestingly, when I got mine, and I was like, oh, how do I get Mario Kart on here? On the internal flap, it's just like, go to the store and download Mario Kart. And I'm like, this is kind of weird. And Josh's has a traditional scratch off redemption code, which I thought was fascinating in terms of what it meant. But the product itself is great. The first reactions are just like, this is so much bigger than a Switch. It's just like comically larger than a Switch. You can see in the picture that we've got the little kickstands up, and they work pretty well. I feel like the red looks like orange. It doesn't really look like red on the Joy-Con. It's like very coral, in my opinion, not red at all.
Yeah, it feels very colorblind friendly with
That's
your
a good way to say
orange
it.
blue look.
There was an easy transfer process, which it almost felt like to me like it had kind of entered the paradigm of like when you refresh and get a new phone, where it's just like bring your old device close and it's going to transfer everything. So it was a very smooth process. It's kind of hard to see in this thing, but it turned all of our downloaded content, our downloaded games, which is the majority of the stuff that we get these days, into virtual cards, allowing us to be able to share them or check them out to our friends or amongst each other, amongst your family in particular. But it was all very smoothly done. The visuals are great. Josh did play one older game on it, which was this Kirby Buffet game. It's just like a little racer game. And he had some latency issues. He was playing online at the time in just like an online match. And so that was interesting. But we've been playing Mario Kart World with local, and it's phenomenal. It's really fun to just actually, like, they call it free roam, but you jump in and you just start driving around. You drive around wherever you want to drive around. The racing itself is fun. The rail riding and the wall riding, we're still like working on getting better at that. The 24 racers in a race is wild. I wasn't expecting it, but most of the tracks, and I don't think it's a new concept, but most of the tracks are more like stage oriented. Like there's 4 stages of this, not 4 laps around the same track, which makes it really interesting. And then I like how a lot of times it's like a running start lead into beginning the race. I feel like the second race that we did, we were like, the screen loads and we're already driving, and like I'm past the starting line before the light goes green. Based on my position or whatever. Yeah,
it's definitely much more fluid in a racing game. Like they could make it into like a GTA or something like that. Like because it is so open world, and there's many times like you fall off something and just fall for like 5-10 seconds. And then hit the ground, and there's a whole other thing there. Like you'll be up in an area where you feel like that you're just, doing the entire map, and then you fall down, and there's just a whole nother world down there that you can play with. And probably the weirdest thing about the game is there is no real map overview per map.
Like a mini map.
Yeah. Like a map that shows you the area you're in. There's a world map. Yes. Yes, right, in the free roam. Yeah.
So overall, Josh, I'm just going to ask you straight out, was it worth going on to the... So I told Josh, again, I think framing it as like we've had some pretty bad experiences before. I had told him when it was, 9 o'clock on Wednesday, I was like, I'm going to get to be kind of, I'm going to be a bit much right now. I'm going to be a bit extreme. Like I might get angry. I might yell, because this stuff can be really frustrating. I will say like there were some website issues on a couple that I noticed. So I do think that there was prominence here, but I just answering quickly, yes or no, or like final takes on, was it worth getting it launch day, going with, 9:01 Wednesday, ordering it and having it in hand?
Yes, I definitely think it was worth it. It's great to have it. It was great to get it done and be done with it by 9:30. Like we had 2 consoles in hand. We didn't have to stay up late. That's one of the advantages of being not on the East Coast, is like a lot of the stuff just doesn't keep you up that late, which is great. And so that was good that was all clear and set up, and we just did it. Again, it wasn't like Samscope was like, hey, be on your computer at 9, we're going to be doing these things. Like you kind of had to know it was going to happen. But I do want to, I want to transition into the overall macro look at this. But do you want to go over anything anymore?
I mean, I was already sold on like, I need to do this now just for the reasons that I said. So time will tell as it unfolds if that was a good decision or a bad decision. But I think that we both know enough about Nintendo's sort of position on these things to feel like it was the right thing to do. And so I personally am just like, wow, I got to unfeel a lot of those bad experiences that I had. And it was actually just great it was the frictionless experience I wanted. And I think it's worth saying just, Walmart captured the entire sale there.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. That's one of the reasons why I think Best Buy and Target, whether they agreed to do it or it was some sort of thing with Nintendo in terms of that, it's not me who they're capturing in terms of a customer. I'm looking for a low friction sale where it's super easy for me to check out. Obviously, Amazon doesn't have first party Nintendo products that it sells. So Amazon was completely out of the equation, at least from my perspective. And so I just say, good job on Walmart. One of the things I think about is how the retailers have improved their technology. And I think that this is a really good demonstration from logistics up through website, through inventory management, through the entire process of how frictionless it was. And I was thankful for that because I'm honestly getting way too old to be upset and crying about not getting a new video game console.
Yes. I think that with this console, you probably could have gotten one at Costco the next day if you had gotten in early.
Yeah.
But all this stuff would have required extra effort.
Yeah.
You would have had to get up, leave the house, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then you would have been paying extra for the Costco ones. I've read here and there, people are like, oh yeah, there's plenty of them out. I've read also things that say that they're all sold out.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that they're all sold out at this point.
That's the interesting thing that we want to kind of track and follow is because it's kind of unclear with the tariffs, with the potential change in the global supply chain of consumer electronics, how they're fabricated, if this is something that's going to be scarce or not, because there was clearly supply chain issues that were the number one cause of the lack of Nintendo Switches in the pandemic age. Obviously, the increased consumer demand facilitated that, and they couldn't necessarily have anticipated that, but they weren't able to compensate for that in a quick period of time.
Right. Yeah. And it's not their fault. They were already. I was looking at a graphic, and it was already several years into that launch. They have about a 5-6 year cadence on these, and I think it either came out in 15 or 16, and so they were towards the tail end, starting to build, probably working on the new one, and so the demand was already tailing off, and so it just kind of popped because of the pandemic and
Animal Crossing.
And Animal Crossing, they just weren't ready for it. And so, and then how could they be ready for it in a pandemic? That makes sense. But I think that's another thing that's interesting here is that the previous version was supposed to be the Switch 2, but it was just an upgraded screen.
Oh, the OLED?
Yeah. Literally no change to the hardware, which is the only thing that I was really interested in anyway, because even the old one's a great machine. It just bogs down on kind of complex video games. It's underpowered. So that's what I was looking for, is just a faster Switch that I could play. And I've said to Ann, I can't wait to play Animal Crossing and not have to worry about frames dropping. That's going to be interesting, or Pokemon, which just has all kinds of frame drops, all that kind of stuff. I was concerned about how I got some freeze frames in that Kirby game, but I'm guessing nobody plays that Kirby game. And so they probably didn't do it. First party games, they're even kind of remaking them for this system, like adding features and stuff like that. But I do find it interesting that this didn't just sell out right away. And we don't know the numbers as far as how many consoles were available.
Yeah.
But generally going back, you look a year or two ago, a common thing for almost everything that has any sort of scarcity to it, and this is outside of public, the network equipment I buy, this happens for, is people will buy up the equipment and then resell it for a slightly increased price.
Yeah.
Quote unquote capitalism, and make some money off of it. So that's concert tickets, cell phones, if it's a limited release cell phone or whatever, but game consoles especially, because they only come out once every 5-7 years or whatever, and for a while there's going to be a demand. People are going to want them, and the fact that didn't happen here feels like a indicator of some sort. Either people are starting to hold on to their money for these kinds of things, people will say, oh, it's an underpowered game, blah blah blah. Jimmy doesn't care that the Snapdragon is not the latest Snapdragon available for the video processor. He wants the new freaking game of Mario Kart, and that's the if you read gaming stuff, they'll just be like, oh well, the OLED screen doesn't have a 180. None of that stuff matters to the primary audience that are the people who are going to buy it off of eBay for twice the price. Don't care about all that stuff. So what's interesting is that those people aren't there right now.
That we've seen.
And so I find that very interesting, especially coming off of 2023, 2024, where we had all this inflation because people were just willing to pay more for stuff. Like every single time the price got up, they're like, nah, that is more expensive. Here's my money. There was no pushback on that. And something's going on now, either with the tariffs or whatever, that is kind of slowing that down, because really it should have been the thing that Best Buy was thinking it was going to be, that they were going to have 1,000 people in front of their thing screaming Nintendo, and it was just like 6 guys who had extra tents. We
don't know that. You're surmising.
Yes, I am giving my opinion. None of this is researched fact.
So I think more to come on this. I think that's the main thing, is we want to kind of track this mentally, just as what does this mean in general, because we think it could be a good indicator, because it's been something in the past that's I think the colorful history that we shared kind of indicates that. But let's move on to our last topic.
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and bring up the visual, and then I will let you kind of talk about it, and we'll kind of dig into things.
Yes. So this is a chart from Our Data is Beautiful. It's shortened information is beautiful, but that doesn't fit in a subtitle. But anyway, this is a chart by this person. The chart shows the confidence by political party
affiliation,
in certain American institutions from 1974 to 2024.
Okay, before we get too deep, I do want to go into the video just to get a little bit of background on this data.
Okay.
So this data comes from the GSS, which I wasn't familiar with, the General Social Survey, which is done by the University of Chicago. So I'm going to play this video for you.
The GSS has been in existence for more than 50 years. It's one of the premier data collections in the country, and it's the only one that allows us to better understand how society's values and views and opinions have changed over time. In the GSS, we asked about 3,000 respondents a whole variety of questions, everything from their perspectives and interests and information related to race relations to spending patterns.
The GSS provides what no other survey can provide, which is the sociology of things. In the natural sciences, they may have telescopes, they may have satellites. In the social science, we have the GSS. Nowadays, data science allows people to more easily predict behaviors, to understand the mechanics of how things relate to one another, and the GSS is a great asset because of all the information that it contains. The GSS started in 1972. The original idea was proposed by Jim Davis, a University of Chicago professor. The GSS is funded by the National Science Foundation and is conducted by NORC, which is an objective, independent, non-partisan organization.
One of the unique aspects of the General Social Survey is that while it does tell a picture of Americans at a certain point in time, by asking the same content over time, we can see how we have evolved. We can see the complexity of our society. We can see the changing values.
Let me go back to the chart. So just worth saying, you can go to the GSS website and get the data. As they mentioned, they just celebrated their 50th anniversary. So this is a large social survey that's been around the United States for just about 50 years. And this chart is taking data from that to do exactly what Josh mentioned, which is to compare the confidence, and I will zoom in on this, and I'm going to kind of key up how to read this chart, the confidence between people who identify as either Democratic or Republican from a party perspective, and it goes across 13 different national institutions. So first, just to kind of look at this, the survey methodology is that the scores were given a 1, 2, or 3. So 1 was hardly any confidence at all, so low confidence. 2 is only some confidence, and 3 is a great deal of confidence. So 1, 2, or 3. So 3 is, yep, trust it. 2 is like, okay, and 1 is like, nah. So that's our scale going up on the y-axis. And then you can see the dots. The x-axis is by time. I'll scroll down a little bit so you can see it. These tick marks are kind of small, but it does go up through 2024 as the author suggests in there. And then the dots are representative of the different political affiliations. So red being the Republicans and blue being the Democrats. When you look at this, you see the dots for every year for each political affiliation. I'm of the opinion that there's some sort of there's smoothing on here done by the lines. So I imagine that they just kind of did like a line of best fit that's designed based off of the various data points that are on there. So when you see the shading between these two lines, that's because each of these lines has been mathematically smoothed out to sort of show that. And then the shading inside, whether it's red or blue, mostly denotes which one has higher confidence, I guess, within this. So let's dig into this. And I don't know, Josh, if you want to pick one to talk about and see how we're interpreting this or what this means. And why did this catch your eye to begin with?
Well, it caught my eye because it was a cool red-blue chart with a bunch of ribbons in it. And as I looked closer, I found it kind of fascinating. I didn't really understand the scale on the left until today, but you kind of got the general gist that up is more and down is less. But knowing that it's a 3-question, I guess this is pre-like or whatever. But like this, the thing that I find the most fascinating about this is the one that caught my eye is the executive branch federal government, where there's just this huge swings from up and down along the red line, and there's swings on the blue line as well that are not as pronounced, right? Like we see just like gigantic swings. What we also don't see here, and it's kind of weird, is that there isn't a jump in the Trump administration for the red line for the federal branch. There is a dot that's up there, which I'm guessing is the year 2016, but the average line just ignores it because it's so far out of range. And just continues on.
Line of best fit,
just continues its way down. And so I found that fascinating. I found it fascinating that it ignored that dot, didn't even give it like a little bit of a bump, because it probably should have had a bump, because as you can see, there is a dot that's way up there that's kind of around 2020. This is the kind of chart where I would have liked more ticks, because where 2020 and 1980 and 2000 is, I really have to think really deeply on this, right? Like, I'm going to say 2000 is right where that red-blue line crosses for the federal one, and then just kind of extrapolate that to the rest of them. But like,
I don't think that's necessarily true, because the far right is 2024.
Yeah.
So like if you counted the dots back, so you can see that you go back 1, it's about the same. So that's 24 to 23, it's about the same. You go to 22, the red and the blue are completely inversed in 22, and then 21. We've got blue above red. 2020, you've got that big separation there. So that that intersection of the red and the blue is probably like 18.
Yeah. I was talking about the one before that. But
Which
yes,
one?
the intersection where it's going up is probably 2020.
Over 2000?
Yeah. Oh, yes, over 2000. That's right. Sorry, I said 2020. I meant 2000. Is the one that there. But that makes sense. I think it's interesting how much smoothing happens on that one. And then like if you look at education, right, like the lines are almost right on the dots, especially recently, right? Like the trends, though both groups are trending down.
Yep.
They're much more on the dot. And like you can see that the red line tries to really push it down, but for 4 years there it was going up on red.
That's probably, yeah.
Recently, right? Like
That's going to be 16.
Yeah. So like you have these, and that's why I'm like, is this really to 2024?
Yeah.
Because if it's to 2024, then 23, 22, and so we're saying that the red side is increasing its feelings
Confidence.
about education in 2020 and 2022, which just doesn't feel right to me.
But it's not very much, right? This is a 3-point scale. So you have to think about the people that are actually responding. They only have 3 choices, right?
Yeah.
And there's a big difference between not confident at all and right? So it'd be easy for a couple people. There's 3,000 people that they sample out of this that formulate these results. You could see how that could change these things and cause that average, the aggregate number, the data point that is actually on here, which is probably likely the average. We can look into the methodology later, but is the surrogate value that represents the entire population of the people that responded to this. So it is interesting. It's not, I don't think it's too super interesting. Like if you look at the scale, we're talking like 2.0 versus 2.1, 2.2. So we're talking about a couple people in theory, a couple records, let's just say records, were slightly up. But you bring up a good point. I think that's kind of interesting, like where the trends are the same. So like medicine, like our confidence in medicine, regardless of partisanship, has somewhat been going down over the last 50 years. Science is interesting because you can see the Democrats are going up where the Republicans are going down. Military is also quite fascinating, but the other ones where it's similar is the bank and financial institutions. Like, look at that. Like, the shading between it is always more above the Republicans, but when you look at those 2 lines of best fit, they follow the same shape over time. And the same thing is kind of true with press. Of course, it diverges as we get to 2024, which makes complete sense if you've watched any sort of news at all and you're a Republican. I mean, we've got fake news everywhere. I think fake news is becoming the reality of what the Blues are saying as well. Organized labor, very similar trend, right? And that makes sense. Obviously the Democrats would be pro-union more than the Republicans, but the shape of it is near identical. And similarly, I think television and press actually kind of mirror themselves in terms of the shape, where press looks like it got a little bit more of a stratification, a separation a little bit earlier on, but the same thing's happening now with TV. You can see it's really, from a Republican's perspective, just like a sharp decline. The Democrat one will be interesting to see as that goes on. But these are sad. Like, if you think about this, so 1 is absolutely no confidence at all. Look at the press numbers, right? So 2 is like 50-50, I could take it or leave it, or like whatever, like you could just, the weather's accurate, right? Like at least you could say that. It's pretty sad to see where the general sentiment is of the United States population when you look at some of these things. Like, we don't trust what journalists are telling us at all. And TV is also on that same path. Look at Congress. That one is another one that's really kind of ugly. It's spreading more. I would guess that we would see the blue no longer going up post-election as we look into like 25, 26, 27 versions of this, if we're on our current trajectory, which who knows, because things are changing quite rapidly. But that, I think, is fascinating, just to see that Congress are the people, these are our elected officials that are supposed to be representing us.
Yeah,
we have no confidence in them.
Our closest representation in the federal government is from Congress. Like,
it's shocking to see that. I'm not surprised that military is up high. I mean, I think, nobody would dare say that they have any problems with the military or that they're doing bad things, which is good to see. But it's very unique. I mean, the Supreme Court one's also interesting. There's general confidence. You can see that blue dot for the latest data point for the Democrats in 2024, that they've lost complete confidence, which aligns completely with the latest appointees within there. The education's also somewhat disappointing to see that that's now going down and we're reaching like a threshold of on confidence level. It's tough. It's a very interesting perspective on things. Not that this stuff has been particularly high historically, right? We're not seeing perfect 3s Anywhere, really. Like military probably is the highest up, or maybe medicine, but these are some very interesting indicators from my perspective on just like what everybody, like what the vibe is, I guess.
I find it, I'm not surprised, like you said, I'm not surprised by anything. I guess the surprising one I feel, and again, because these are smart multiples, I can't really tell how like, you know, banks and finance matches up with Congress. But
that shape is similar.
But like, it's interesting to me how banks and finance is fairly high, and that's shocking to me in my own point of view. I just don't know what faith people have in, like.
Well, you say what faith people have. I'll say this is just kind of two tidbits. Like, I'll ask you questions. Do you have faith that the bank that you put your money in is going to keep your money in there?
Like 95%, yeah.
Okay, so that's high confidence. Do you have high confidence that they're acting in your best interest?
No.
Okay, so that's the difference, right? So like, do you have confidence that there's not insider trading on the stock market? No. Right, but do you have confidence that if you go to the bank to withdraw money, or if you want to get a mortgage, you'll be able to get it?
Yeah.
So there's some polarity there. The other thing I was going to say is, like, we looked at the Fortune 500 recently, and it's more the credit card processors than the banks. They have pretty high profit margins, or profit as a percentage of revenue compared to other things, right? And that's quite telling. You know, these are companies making a lot of money off of just the concept of transacting money.
Yeah.
So it is interesting. I mean, I guess this makes sense that there would be this great drop off because of the 2028 financial crisis, right? That would be that would be the crisis right there.
Right.
That's got to be that kind of pivot down, which is fascinating that we were like, I have no idea, but I would want to know what this is. Is this like, it's not 70s, it's somewhere in the 80s, or maybe the 90s, the early 90s. And this is what I think you were saying is like, it really suffers from not having that clearly. Although I'm not a fan of grid lines, I think focusing on visual vertical grid lines could have been good here for the timing of it.
Or just calling something out or whatever.
It could be nice to actually have a companion one that had some of these large milestones or like major events, you know, the 2008 financial crisis, the, you know, internet bust and subsequent boom, when there were wars, when 9/11 happened, right?
Yeah.
Like, if we had selectively chosen some of those things, it could be interesting to see how that added a bit more context to the chart.
Yeah. Right now, you're kind of left filling that stuff in and going, hey, there's a rise there. I remember people getting really gung-ho about the military, you know, after 9/11. So maybe that's that big upward shift that we see around 2000. But yeah, it is that's probably the only thing I'd say is it's great data because you could really feel the trends on it. The lines are very much average, or whatever you want to say. Like, the dots are everywhere and the lines are very smooth.
By design.
Yes, by design, and it looks good. It took me a while to understand, but I think that like having the color fill as the one that's on top can kind of keep you grounded as to which one is higher and lower at that time, even though sometimes it's burst by dots.
One thing I'm going to say here, and then we definitely need to wrap up, is last comment, is as I look at this longer and longer, I'm wondering if these institutions are sorted from highest aggregate confidence to lowest, if you were to look at it. So if you imagine drawing like an average line
for every dot on the screen,
right, through it, is that what that's representatives? And I think it is. I don't know if it's for the latest year or if it's just for all time. But, and again, you know, this is my quick look at this, just trying to interpret it. It would reason to say medicine, the American public has the most confidence in, then science and military, the Supreme Court. And then as we go down and down and down and down, we get to press, organized labor, and television being at the bottom. Clearly, it can't be sorted by just the latest year because press would have been at the far right. But Congress, you know, our elected officials that we actually have a lot more say in, the president of the United States.
And we pay a lot of money for.
Right, what our taxes are used for, right, is pretty darn low on here. So that's interesting. And I think it would have been useful if the author had maybe explained that, because Otherwise, you're left with what was the chosen reason for medicine being first, science being second, and so on. But I think it was actually intentional with how it was sorted.
Yeah, just total overall average.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
All right. Any final thoughts you want to wrap up with before we call it for today?
No, I think we went a little bit longer than we wanted to. We may figure that out in the future. This is going to be very much a work in progress type thing. As time goes on, we'll probably settle into a really good routine after a few of these, but this was obviously a pretty rough start to a better thing in the future.
Yeah. And I mean, if you want to comment, feel free to drop us a note. Let us know what you found interesting, what you didn't find interesting. If you don't care about it, that's fine, because we weren't talking to you.
Yeah. That was it. Thank you.